Okay, so I lied. I'm not going to do it in one video. For some reason, the camera stopped recording. Very strange. So anyway, we're going to continue on with remembering. As I said, we tend to forget. We tend to not listen to, i.e. not remember important messages because they're not as desirable. That's why you have trouble in, say, your statistics class, because you don't really find that interesting, so you don't want to listen to it. So you don't listen effectively, therefore you never put it into the long-term memory, and you have trouble recalling it when it's time to recall it on like a test or an assignment. We also tend to forget the middle of messages. There are two theories called the primacy effect and the recency effect. The primacy effect basically states that we tend to focus on the beginning of a message, and the recency effect basically says that we focus on the most recent part of a message, the end part of a message. Meaning we forget the stuff in the middle. We don't focus on the stuff in the middle. Well, let's face it, messages have a middle. You can't have a message without a middle. So, as a sender of messages, you have to be aware of, people are going to tend to remember the beginning and the ending more than the middle. But you need the middle. So there are things that you can do to help your audience remember not just the middle, but the whole thing better. Repetition is always good. Good teachers will repeat things usually 3 times. Not necessarily in the same words, but repetition, for some reason our brains work in groups of 3s. So they will often repeat these things over and over 3 times to kind of cement it in your head. We also use mnemonics. And a mnemonic, I'm sure you've all heard of a mnemonic device. A mnemonic device is anything that can help you remember something else. It could be a song. I have a buddy who, if you ask him what the state capitals are, he can't tell you, but he can sing the Animaniacs song that has all the state capitals in it. Doesn't make any sense to me, but hey. It could be something, it could be a story. I know people that have learned the periodic table because each element they tell a little story, and so they can remember it that way. The way that you can tell how many days are in a month. If it's 30 or 31, you put your hands together and you start on your pinky knuckle, and it's January, February, March, April, May, and so on. And the months that are on the knuckles have 31 days. And if it's in the soft part, it doesn't. It has less than 31 days. So if you're ever trying to figure out how many days are in September or August, they both have 31 because they're side-by-side knuckles. And that's a mnemonic. It could be anything. It literally could be a dance. It could be a little, I know people who have used their pens as stand-in for anatomy tests. They basically label, not literally label, but they say, okay, this part of the pen equals this part of the anatomy. And that helps them remember that particular thing. Note-taking. Note-taking is a huge thing when it comes to listening effectively, especially for memory. This is why I recommend that you print out the slides for this class. And even when it's not online, when people are in class and they can view the PowerPoints, I recommend they print out the slides, because that way they don't have to write everything. They can focus on what I'm saying so they can listen. Because when you're taking notes, what are you not doing? Listening. You're taking notes. Your brain can't focus on both of those things effectively. So you might be hearing what's being said, but you're not listening. So note-taking. And some little tricks that you can do to help you remember, focus on the main ideas. Don't get caught up in the details. I have trouble with this because I'm a detail person. So when people start sending me messages, I will often focus on the trees and lose sight of the forest. And so I can miss the message. Organize. Look for patterns. Try to connect it to things that you already understand. So if somebody's trying to teach you how to make a dish, let's say you're cooking, they're trying to teach you how to make a dish you've never heard of, well, try to relate that to something that you do know how to make. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to connect these unrelated ideas. So that's the stages of listening. Again, if you're looking at the slideshow, there's going to be a couple more slides, mnemonics and note-taking that we talk about. And so the first stage is getting ready to listen physically and mentally. That's mindfulness. then it's understanding, making sure as a sender that they understand your message, as a receiver, making sure that the sender knows that you understand the message. If you don't, you ask clarifying questions. The third stage is evaluating, being able to look at a message and determine whether it's truth or if it's not truth, and if not, using probing questions to make a better judgment. The response stage, offering that feedback often through back channel cues, and then lastly, remembering, using repetition and mnemonics to help you remember a message that you listen to better. So now we've talked about the stages, we're going to take a look at reasons why we aren't good listeners. And there are a lot of different types of obstacles to listening. Some of them are external, some of them are internal, some of them are sort of both, kind of behavior related. The first of these are external obstacles. These are things that are out in the world around you that you don't have a lot of control over. Noise, for example, internal, external, semantic, physiological, physical noise, it doesn't matter. As a receiver, a lot of times you don't have much control over all of those. But it exists, and it can get in the way of listening. You also have message overload, and this is where, we're being bombarded with stimuli all over. If you remember back into the perception chapter, we talked about the first stage of perception is picking certain things to pay attention to. Same thing here. You can't give 100% focus to every stimuli that you're taking in with your ears. You can't do it. So you have to be able to try to pick and choose what you're actually focusing on, just like with perception. Message complexity. A lot of messages are very complicated. And if you try to focus on every single detail, every single technical term or connection or whatever, you are going to be overwhelmed, and the end result is going to be complete and utter confusion. Whereas if you focused on the parts that you did understand, yeah, you still might be confused about some parts, but you're going to at least remember something. But if you're too focused on everything, you're going to end up looking like this, having no idea what's going on. So those are external obstacles. Again, you as a receiver, as a listener, usually don't have a ton of control over this. You can't control how complex messages are. You can't control how many messages you're being sent. You don't have a lot of control over noise. So you have to adapt inside yourself. Then you have internal obstacles. These are things that are inside you that you do have control over. Preoccupation. This is being caught up in what is happening to you and losing sight of the overall picture. How does it, so somebody says something, all you can think about is how that's going to affect you. Well, you're missing the rest of the message because you're too focused on yourself. So you don't want to do that. You want to take the whole picture in, and then after you take it in, then you can break it down. Another internal obstacle is prejudgment, being prejudiced. Thinking that you know what somebody's going to say before they say it. Tuning them out because you think, oh, this person can't possibly have anything to offer me. Well, unless you're psychic, which I'm pretty sure none of you are, because if you were, you probably wouldn't be taking an online class at Lakeland Community College. You'd probably be millionaires. As I said before, don't prejudge. Let the speaker speak, and then you can judge the crap out of their message, but wait till they say it first. Don't prejudge, because you're gonna, I see this a lot in politics, and this is why a lot of times politicians can't get along, because nobody's listening to them. They're all flapping their gums, and everybody assumes that they know what they're going to say, and so they don't listen to anybody. And that's true of both sides. Another one is reacting to emotionally loaded language. Let's face it, words have power. We're going to talk about that more in the language chapter. And a lot of people know that words have power. And so they will use those words to control you and to make you not listen. The N-word is an example of this. A lot of the terms that the media uses when they refer to things like black and white, those are, left-wing, right-wing, conservative, liberal. These are terms that they know have an emotional impact to people. It's like pushing buttons. So they use those terms because when they're focused on, when you, the listener, are focused on reacting to a word, what are you not paying attention to? The message. And that's how they get things done when you're not paying attention. That's why the government, a lot of times you'll notice when there's something important about to happen. For example, the Iran treaty that they're talking about signing right now. Right when that was happening, what happened? Cecil the Lion got killed. Well, all you heard about was Cecil the Lion. Well, you didn't hear about what was going on. So this lion, which is, it was sad and tragic, but the Iran nuclear deal is far more important. But what was everybody focused on? The lion. Because they were using language to get you, the people, to focus on the wrong things. And people can do that all the time. I know if I want to kind of control my friend Tim a little bit, I can just start talking about politics, and he loses his mind. And so I can get him to do certain things because he's not focused on what we're doing. He's focused on the political stuff, so he's not paying attention. So don't do that. Words are words, and yes, they can be painful, but you have to realize that sometimes people say words intentionally to get you to not focus on what they're actually saying.